conflict is being fought with aircraft, missiles and drones. Iran's huge inventory of missiles has been the target of US and Israeli airstrikes as launchers, launch sites and component factories are systematically targeted and destroyed. Israeli estimates of Iran's missile stock before the war sat at around 2,500. Its inventory of armed drones, cheaper and easy to make, is much larger and in the tens of thousands. The main weapon Gulf nations, Israel and the US, are using to stop Iran's missiles is the Patriot air defense system. Its advanced PAC-3 interceptors, moving at speeds in excess of 6,000 kilometers per hour, can detect and hit incoming missiles from up to 160 kilometers away. But they're expensive, at $4.5 million per interceptor, and usually 2 or 3 or 5 for every incoming missile. The Patriot interceptors are accurate and advanced, but they take a long time to make. Last year, Lockheed Martin, the manufacturer, made a total of 620, and these have to be divvied up between Ukraine, NATO allies, Japan, Taiwan, Israel, Jordan, Kuwait, the UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia, as well as protect the UN bases in them.
Let's take this on with Andreas Krieg, who's an associate professor at the School of Security Studies, King's College London, joins us from London. Andreas, thanks for joining us here. Interesting hearing about the constituent parts of the weapons that the different countries have, but what about the resources, the stocks of those, and how long they may last? I mean, how long can Iran keep firing missiles into Israel, into the Gulf, and how long can the Gulf defend itself? How long indeed can Israel fire and defend itself? With the stocks that they currently have, and that because how long all these missiles last and all those the stocks of weapons last has a fundamental impact on how long the war is going to last.
No, I mean, we have to differentiate between the different types of weapons that are being used by the Iranians. So the ballistic missiles are limited in terms of their depleting their stockpiles, and they won't be able to replenish them as quickly as, for example, their stockpiles of drones. But they have thousands and thousands of drones, very cheaply made, and they can continue producing them. And also there is a different sort of set of objectives here. So if you're striking Israel, you're trying to inflict pain, you're using your ballistic missiles. We see the rate of firing to go down, but they're also using more sophisticated technology to target Israeli targets. In the Gulf, the situation is slightly different, because in the Gulf, they don't necessarily want to inflict pain through these warheads. What they're trying to do is trying to disrupt the flow of trade, trying to disrupt the freedom of navigation, trying to disrupt aviation and basically free movement through airspace. All of that can be achieved with very little. You don't need to use ballistic missiles. You can use a drone a day to disrupt the airspace and basically thereby putting pressure on the Gulf states trying to intercept them. And yes, at the moment, the stockpiles obviously are winding down, but the UAE and Qatar in particular do have quite a significant stockpile. This is also true for Saudi Arabia. But if the rate at which we've seen these interceptors being used over the last couple of days, particularly the first 4 days of this conflict, at that rate, obviously the Gulf states couldn't sustain it for weeks. But if we're seeing now these attacks winding down, they could potentially sustain it for quite some time. But I do think time is on Iran's side, and all they need to do is disrupt from time to time, and thereby kind of paralyzing the Gulf.
What do you make of the Iranian strategy of targeting Gulf countries, neighboring countries, in the way that it has? And do you think the Trump administration made that calculation that it would go as far as it has?
Absolutely not. There's no way that the Trump administration had a plan or a strategy. It's quite clear they don't. We've seen probably 4 or 5 different plans being communicated to the press from Washington over the last couple of days with different timelines, different objectives. It seems like it's a bit of an improv military operation where they're trying to improvise and see what comes next. So there's absolutely no plan. They certainly didn't plan for the Iranians to escalate in the way they did, although everyone in the Gulf, everyone who's done Gulf security, anybody who's ever done any war game on the Gulf has planned for this worst-case scenario. And this is the scenario that we're seeing now with the Strait of Hormuz practically closed, with attacks on energy and critical national infrastructure, attacks on ports and airports. That is something, the kind of what the Iranians are trying to do is hit the center of gravity and the livelihood of these Gulf states. That was to be expected. It's going all out. It's certainly inflicting pain and massive disruption, not just for the Gulf states, because we're now seeing how relevant the Gulf states are for the global economy, but it really disrupts GDP potentially down the line with energy prices going up. That will have ripple effects across the world. There's no one in the world who will not be affected by this war, and with every day that this continues, this is an attack by Iran on the global economy to put pressure on the world and on different states to put pressure